Hey, your own hadith says Muhammad married Aisha at 6 and consummated at 9. Maybe you're a Muslim who saw that and started doubting Islam, or a non-Muslim who can't accept Islam because of it. Prophet Muhammad and Aisha's marriage is their silver bullet. The gotcha critics think will refute Islam. We don't dodge, we don't apologize. By the end, you'll see how this gotcha crumbles under hypocrisy and why Muslims have zero doubt. Objectors say,
your prophet married a child.
This is an issue of subjective versus objective morality. A Muslim's morality is grounded in the guidance of Allah, God. He all-knowing and most just. If God declares something contrary to what humans feel is right, then rationally we Muslims give priority to God's judgment instead of our own limited perspectives. Look at the West. Their sense of right and wrong is shaped by their thoughts, culture, and personal feelings, leading to moral inconsistencies which we can see in their societal trends. But note, they say your prophet married a child. This objection uncloaks hypocrisy and inconsistency, to say the least. The West looks to laws and regulations for what is moral and immoral, and they take it as objective truth. But get this, those same laws change often and arbitrarily and are written by politicians who don't exactly have high public approval ratings, whereas we Muslims just follow God. But no, since the government said it's illegal, it's elevated to a moral absolute. Why do the Western objectors rely so heavily on external authority? It seems they lack confidence in their own moral compass, deferring to the very lawmakers whom they publicly distrust to define right from wrong. And so they agree with the lawmakers. Yes, everyone is a child until they turn 18 years old. According to them, you could be 1 minute shy of your 18th birthday and then poof, you magically go from child to adult 1 minute later. Obviously, this makes zero sense to anyone, but the Western objectors need a standard because again, without it, they seem to not be able to rely on their own judgment, raising questions about their moral framework, which in this case is deciding who is mature versus immature, who is a vulnerable child versus an individual with cognition and intellect. I mean, if this were perceived as an absolute breakdown of morals and human understanding, would it be surprising? As humans, we've all observed the phenomena of the man or woman child. A person is 55 years old, but less mature than a person who is 15 years old. And we've also observed the opposite. Even the Western objectors know this, but again, they need a standard from the government because they're hesitant to trust their own judgment. How should I raise my family? How should I live my life? How can I protect my children from predators? Oh right, the government will just tell me. They'll legalize fornication, then arbitrarily decide on a legal age of consent, and then arbitrarily decide what to do when someone above the legal age of consent has sex with someone below the legal age of consent, and then arbitrarily decide what to do when, better yet, two people under the legal age of consent have sex with each other. Man, the West is considered so moral. All the rules perfectly and arbitrarily laid out for the righteous Western societies to follow. The Western objectors think,
If only the Muslims were like us. Instead, their prophet married a child.
the glaring inconsistency in this objection comes from the fact that most of this arbitrary rulemaking doesn't even apply to most of the West. Child marriage still takes place throughout much of the Western world. It's legal in almost half the states in America, with some states requiring parental consent and some not even having a minimum age. So the border between adult and child is the 18-year-old line. Okay, the government doesn't want adults and minors to fornicate with each other, but it's okay if they marry each other? So the legal age of consent is only relevant within the context of fornication, but within a marital context, their arbitrary rules mean nothing. Interesting. If you're sensible, you can see how hypocritical the Western objectors to Islam are. In 1871, Delaware's age of consent was as low as 7. Most other US states had it set at 10. Then with the rise of feminism in the 1920s post-World War I, age of consent laws began to be changed to promote women's education and employment to rebuild post-war economics. Now this is where they change their objection and show their true colors. Instead of your prophet married a child, it becomes your prophet had sex with a 9-year-old. Ah, there it is. The Western world, obsessed with sex. They use this new objection to provoke a moral defense from Muslims. The Islam opposers know that a Muslim will jump to defend Islam against this objection. They know that we will jump to say Aisha radiallahu anha was menstruating and she was physiologically mature to get married and consummate with the Prophet, peace be upon him. They know that we will jump to explain how this kind of marriage was completely normal in traditional societies up until recently, aka the 20th century, by providing them with all of the argumentation. We'd say even the Prophet, peace be upon him's enemies never criticized his marriage to Aisha radiallahu anha, showing how it was normal in societies back, how judging the past with the standards of our present day is logically fallacious and known as presentism. We'd say all pre-modern religions have this practice. The Talmud says the age of marriage is 3. Mary gave birth at 12 and married Joseph when he was 90. Life expectancy was in the 20s to 30s back then. Fatima radiallahu anha passed away in her 20s. all of Muhammad, peace be upon him's daughters died during his lifetime. Women had to endure 5 to 7 full-term pregnancies just to keep the population stable, and they would often die during childbirth due to iron deficiencies, making it imperative for them to procreate as early as possible. The Islam opposers don't care about any of this. Their ulterior motive is to gain all this argumentation so they can make it okay for them to propagate a certain movement of theirs, if you know what I mean. You might think this is crazy, but break out of their trance for a second. That is why they bring this topic up. Could they be twisting our defenses of the Prophet's marriage intended for a marital context to rationalize and normalize behaviors that are universally condemned, if you know what I mean? And of course, we Muslims will not justify such abhorrent practices for them. Islam is simple. No marriage is allowed between a mature person and an immature person, and maturity is not exclusively physical or biological. The Western objectors and Islam opposers just look at Aisha radiallahu anha's age of marriage and make a conclusion. They have this foul habit of oversimplifying and skipping prerequisites for a marriage to be valid in Islam just to make Muslims look bad. Understand that marriage is an elaborate procedure in Islam. It's a contract. You cannot skip steps like the Westerners do. There must be a wali, Muslim male guardian, who is often the father of the woman, and no righteous father or wali would allow his daughter to be married and consummate when she is both physically and psychologically immature. Is that what Aisha's father Abu Bakr radiallahu anhum, who was also Muhammad, peace be upon him's best friend, did? Obviously not. A'udhu billah. Aisha radiallahu anha was physically and psychologically mature. She's not even comparable to anyone at that age during that time, and especially today. She was one of the most intelligent women to inhabit our planet, a prodigy, a human encyclopedia, so gifted in memorization of complex information and biography, a master of hadith narrating 2,210, which is the third most behind Ibn Umar radiallahu anhum. She was not an average human who did nothing except waste time and act on her desires, and her parents, they were not average people, and she did not marry an average human being. She married the best, the #1 most influential man to ever walk on planet Earth. The marriage between the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Aisha radiallahu anha is not comparable at all to, let's say, an individual heading to a specific country to fulfill his illicit desires, fueled by his consumption of adult content, to which unfortunately the West says, yeah, that consumption is okay. But no, the Western objector says,
Your Prophet married out of desire.
oh yeah? Muhammad, peace be upon him's first wife Khadija radiallahu anha was older than him by 10 to 15 years and was his first and longest marriage. All his other wives were widows, highlighting he had motivations beyond personal desire, like providing for women in vulnerable social positions, and his track record shows he never pursued young inexperienced girls outright despite having the social influence to easily do so. The Western objectors and Islam opposers love to criticize us Muslims. Do they think we despise our children? What about the Westerners themselves, who are okay with their daughters and sons likely depleting their pair bonding abilities by participating in hookup culture, but opposed to their daughters and sons having their marriages fixed to trustworthy, righteous families? Which system works better? You tell me. The one where your daughters are likely to get traumatized by lustful men, where sons are likely to get emotionally manipulated into hibernation by someone's ungrateful daughter who carries a very dangerous allure, and where fornication and unplanned pregnancies are rampant, leading to fatherless children and single mother households, or the one that emphasizes the Muslim male guardian protecting his daughters and sons from such negative influence? Which one will it be? The one based on objective morality from Allah, God, or the one based on blindness and subjectivity? Islam is rational. We know that there's varying levels of maturity across people and across different groups, so we don't give a specific age of consent. Rather, we follow the divinely inspired standard of maturity as a condition, rather than just a number. This covers all groups and societies. We don't force an arbitrary age onto anyone. In Islam, we have an entire comprehensive moral, ethical, and legal architecture around sex and marriage to ensure that everyone's rights are safeguarded. The West has what I call the 3 little pig straw house architecture. Architecture that prolongs adolescence and promotes softness. Just look at the 9-year-old in Gaza versus the 22-year-old undergrad student in the West. The West does not prioritize maturity, but they allow for the premature exposure to sexualized content and behaviors in the media and in schools. For example, that twerking as a 3rd grader to Cardi B for everyone on social media to see is fun? The West says that little girls should be put in beauty contests and engages in controversial discussions regarding minors' autonomy in making huge medical choices without full parental consent, if you know what I mean. The West needs an age of consent, which clearly should be high in their society. In contrast, the Muslims ensure that their children's rate of psychological development is as close as possible to their rate of physiological development. And when their children are biologically capable of procreation, we Muslims say they should be capable of meeting the responsibilities associated with that. If our children are not capable of the aforementioned, then sex, which can only happen inside of marriage in Islam, is out of the question. But no, the Western Objector says, you Muslims hate your children. Let me tell you something, buddy. A study from a decade ago showed that 12% of 12-year-olds in America are already sexually active. And the number is certainly higher now since that was 10 years ago. I mean, these parents don't even know what their kids are up to. Yet, the West wants to act like they have the moral high ground. Let me give you another one. About 90% of sexual assaults on children are never reported. So imagine the real numbers. There's clearly a problem in the West, yet Islam and the Muslims are under the crosshairs. And so the marriage of Aisha radiallahu anha represents her uniqueness as an individual, in stark contrast to the sick fetishes some individuals, including certain Western objectors, may exhibit or condone. Like I said before, Muhammad, peace be upon him, had multiple wives, with most of them being older or widows. This shows how Aisha radiallahu anha was an exception because she was exceptional. Bars. And so by extension, we know that exceptions can exist. Young people can possess levels of impressive maturity, and by Islam and Allah's rules, they are then treated accordingly. What cannot exist is a fetish-driven liking to minors arising from a sick person's whims and desires, who sees minors as an outlet for them to emotionally manipulate and a platform for them to usurp. If you're a logical and sensible person, by now you should be awake to the fact that this objection surrounding Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him's marriage to Aisha radiallahu anha is a calculated, sneaky tactic designed to trick people into opposing Islam while also deflecting Western hypocrisy. Here's food for thought. When individuals seeking to exploit minors visit countries like Thailand and the Philippines, the locals hold their children tight, and that's for a specific reason. This issue of exploiting minors has many traces throughout history, and it'll be ironic when the Islam haters realize that the Islamic Empire provided the robust framework to stop this. To remedy this issue, the Westerners put in place an arbitrary age of consent, again because they need it, whereas we Muslims don't because of our architecture and foundations. In Islam, there is no sex without marriage, no marriage without consent, and no consent without maturity. And the only people to violate this would be hedonistic Islam opposers and irreligious, ignorant people. Our religion, Islam, and its walls architectured by Allah the Exalted are bulletproof, which is why this silver bullet that non-Muslims believe to possess regarding Aisha radiallahu anha's age of marriage will never penetrate us. Rather, it will boomerang and wound the Westerners and Islam haters instead. Assalamu alaikum.